Welcome to Biggest Spoilars, the destination for exclusive spoilers, latest updates.
Drew Kane will face a shooter question on the stage while Brad Cooper and Britt Westbourne deal with a disaster. At Cafe Sherry, Britt and Brad have set up themselves in quite a dilemma. Since neither of them has plutocrat to pay for all the precious particulars they just ordered, Brad and Britt will have to figure out their coming move. Brad will suppose perhaps they can call someone for help, but he surely wouldn't want to call Lucas Jones. Britt presumably wouldn't want to summon Jason Morgan either, but she might consider reaching out to Nina Reeves. Still, Nina may have her phone on silent since she's been in court. However, she might suggest they should just make a run for it, if Britt can't get Nina over there to pay the bill. Britt and Brad might bail on the check before making their way back to her room above Bobby's. Brad and Britt are going to continue their gabfest there, but trouble could be brewing if they were honored at Cafe Sherry. Harrison Chase will arrest two characters before Friday's show wraps up, so it wouldn't be surprising if Britt and Brad end up in legal hot water. At Jocelyn Jack's apartment, she'll try to steer Jason down from the victim intelligence he has regarding Britt. Jocelyn will suppose Britt is just as shamefaced as the others involved in this Caesar Faison design, but Jason wouldn't have the same perspective. Jason will have a warning to pass on and may prompt Jocelyn to be careful when it comes to Jack Brennan. Jocelyn will make an oath on Friday's GH occasion and may contend she can take care of herself since her eyes are wide open. At Lulu Spencer's house, she'll have another fierce outburst. Brennan will be on the entering end of it before he crosses paths with Nina outdoors. Of course, Brennan will point out that effects went Nina's way regarding the rearmost substantiation against Willow Kane. The execution no longer has the original business cam footage, so Brennan easily did what Nina asked of him. Now it'll be time for Nina to keep her end of the bargain and exploit her bond with Charlotte. Brennan is counting on Nina to quiz Charlotte and partake any information about her contact with Valentine Cassadine. Speaking of Valentine, he'll dispute with Carly Spencer and make it clear that she needs to assume the worst of Brennan. Indeed, when Brennan does commodity positive, Valentine feels like there's always going to be an ulterior motive behind it. Valentine will also push Carly to be aware of the other people Brennan could target. However, he could go after Carly's family members, if this scheme heads south and Brennan retaliates. It looks like Valentine will remind Carly of that fact and admit just how high the stakes are. Meanwhile, Isaiah Gannon will show off his probative side and most likely dote on Portia Robinson at the cabin. In the courtroom, Christina Corinthos Davis will take the stage, so she'll face some tricky grilling sessions as a result. Drew will also serve as a substantiation, so ADA Justine Turner will flat out ask Congressman Kane if he remembers who shot him. Although Drew doesn't recall who pulled the detector yet, he may find ways to point the cutlet at Michael Corinthos anyway. Alexis Davis advised against that, but Drew tends to do whatever he wants. The courtroom in Port Charles was meant to be a place of order, justice, and final answers. Instead, it became the stage for chaos, confession, and consequences no one could escape. What started as a carefully controlled legal proceeding spiraled into an emotional reckoning when an unexpected sound, Willow's ringtone, cut through the silence like a blade. From that moment on, nothing could stop the truth from pouring out. This wasn't just a trial. It was a baptism by fire. And by the end of the day, Kai Taylor and Trina Robinson would emerge transformed, no longer silent witnesses, but truth-tellers whose honesty would ignite anger, fear, and dangerous threats across Port Charles. A courtroom waiting for resolution. The courtroom was packed wall to wall. Family members, friends, officers, and reporters filled every seat, sensing that something monumental was about to unfold. The judge's gavel echoed sharply, demanding order, but the tension in the air was impossible to quiet. At the center of it all sat Willow, her posture rigid, her hands clasped tightly together. She looked calm on the surface, but those closest to her could see the strain behind her eyes. Secrets weighed heavily on her shoulders, secrets she had tried desperately to bury. Across the room, Kai and Trina sat apart, each lost in their own thoughts. They had come prepared to speak, but not fully prepared for what it would cost them once they did. Because truth, once spoken, has consequences. The calm before the sound. The prosecution was mid-argument, laying out a narrative they believed was airtight. Timelines were presented. Statements were read. Evidence was referenced with confidence bordering on arrogance. But courtroom certainty has a way of collapsing when the unexpected interrupts. Just as the judge prepared to move forward, a sound rang out, sharp, unmistakable, and utterly out of place. A phone. Willow's phone. Willow's ringtone stops the court cold. The ringtone echoed through the courtroom, slicing through the tension like a siren. Heads snapped in her direction. Conversation stopped mid-breath. Even the judge froze, stunned by the intrusion. Willow's face drained of color. She scrambled to silence the phone, but the damage was already done. That ringtone wasn't just an interruption, it was a reminder. A reminder of everything Willow had tried to suppress. Everything she hadn't told the truth about. The judge demanded an explanation. The prosecution seized the moment, pressing Willow about why her phone was on and why she looked like she'd seen a ghost. The room leaned in. Something had just cracked open. Encouraging words sparked courage. As Willow struggled to find her voice, Trina caught her eye. There was no judgment there, only understanding. Trina gave the slightest nod, a silent message that said, "It's time." Nearby, Kai shifted uncomfortably. His jaw tightened as guilt surged to the surface. He had promised himself he would stay quiet. He had convinced himself that silence was safer. But safety built on lies never lasts. From the gallery, Curtis Ashford spoke softly, encouraging, steady, and unwavering. His words didn't echo, but they landed exactly where they needed to. "Do the right thing," he urged. Those words became the turning key. The baptism of truth begins. The judge allowed the questioning to continue, and Willow finally admitted what the ringtone symbolized. It wasn't just a call, it was a connection to information she had avoided confronting. Her voice trembled as she acknowledged that she knew more than she had shared. That admission alone shifted the balance of the case. And once the door was open, there was no closing it again. Kai stood next. Kai breaks his silence. Kai approached the stand slowly, each step heavier than the last. His testimony began cautiously, but it didn't take long before the truth demanded more than half answers. He spoke about what he had witnessed. What he had overheard. The inconsistencies that had haunted him since the night in question. He admitted his fear of retaliation, fear of being blamed, fear of destroying lives. But fear, he confessed, had already done enough damage. Gasps rippled through the room as Kai revealed details that contradicted earlier statements. Timelines shifted. Motives sharpened. The prosecution's confidence faltered. And then Trina stood up. Trina tells the whole truth. Trina's voice didn't shake. She spoke with clarity, conviction, and the kind of honesty that leaves no room for doubt. She confirmed Kai's account, and then expanded on it. She described what she saw, what she knew, and why she had stayed silent for so long. Her confession wasn't dramatic. It was devastating. Trina explained how pressure, loyalty, and fear had kept her quiet. She admitted she had tried to protect people she loved, believing she was preventing further harm. But silence, she realized, had only enabled injustice. The courtroom was silent as Trina finished speaking. This was the baptism, the moment where lies were washed away, leaving raw, undeniable truth in their wake. Angry threats erupt. The reaction was immediate and explosive. From the back of the courtroom, a furious voice shouted accusations. Another followed with a threat so venomous that deputies rushed forward to intervene. "You'll regret this," someone hissed. Security moved quickly, escorting several individuals out as tempers flared. The judge threatened contempt charges, but even the gavel couldn't drown out the rage unleashed by Kai and Trina's testimony. Truth had named names. And those named were not ready to accept it quietly. Willow's guilt comes to the surface. As chaos unfolded, Willow sat frozen, tears streaming down her face. The ringtone had been the catalyst, but the guilt had been hers all along. She admitted she had ignored warning signs. That she had convinced herself staying quiet was an act of kindness. Now she understood the cost. Willow's emotional collapse forced an early recess, but the damage was irreversible. Her credibility was shaken, but her honesty, at last, was undeniable. Legal fallout begins immediately. The prosecution requested time to reassess the case. Defense attorneys scrambled to object, discrediting Kai and Trina's statements, questioning their motives, and accusing them of coordination. But it was too late. The truth had aligned too cleanly. Too powerfully. The judge ordered further investigation, reopening lines of inquiry that had been prematurely closed. New subpoenas were discussed. Additional witnesses were considered. This case was no longer what it had been that morning. Outside the courtroom, fear and fury. In the courthouse hallway, tensions reached a boiling point. Kai was confronted by someone he once trusted, anger flashing in their eyes. Trina was pulled aside by friends warning her to watch her back. Threats were whispered. Promises of revenge hung heavy in the air. Port Charles has a long memory, and it doesn't always forgive. Curtis stayed close to Trina, his protective instincts on high alert. He knew better than anyone that telling the truth in this town often comes with a target. A quiet moment of encouragement. Later, in a private room away from the noise, Kai and Trina finally exhaled. The weight they had carried for weeks, months, had lifted, even as new dangers loomed. They hadn't done this for praise. They had done it because the truth demanded it. Curtis offered quiet reassurance. "Whatever comes next," he said, "you did the right thing." Those words mattered. They always do. What this means for Port Charles. The courtroom drama triggered by Willow's ringtone has set off a chain reaction that will reach far beyond this case. Relationships will fracture. Trust will be tested. And those who issued threats may soon realize that intimidation won't silence the truth anymore. Kai and Trina crossed a line they can never uncross, but they did so with integrity. Willow's moment of panic became a moment of reckoning. And Port Charles will never be the same. What's next on General Hospital? Will the threats against Kai and Trina escalate? Can Willow recover from the damage done to her credibility? Who else will be exposed as the investigation deepens? And will justice finally prevail, or will revenge strike first? One thing is certain. When truth rings out in a courtroom, it demands to be answered. Anna Devane got a fearful blast from the history, while Valentine Cassadine gave a Verity lemon to Carly Spencer. And at Café Sherry, Brad Cooper and Britt Westbourne were faced with a disturbing problem. Today on General Hospital, Anna's fearful blast from the history Anna was planning when Pascal came over the PA and told her in French to face the wall for her lunch. Reluctantly, Anna complied. When he entered with a charger, he asked why she wasn't working on her biographies. As they spoke in French, Anna, frustrated, wondered where he'd taken her and why he left a tablet, but Pascal didn't answer. He only respected how she kept busy while interned. After eating, Anna angrily picked up the charger and felt commodity under. Taped to the bottom was a package wrapped in brown paper, which was a paperback of The Crystalline Conspiracy by P.K. Sinclair. This was a new written by Caesar Faison under a alias grounded on their time as intelligencers frightened by the necrology. For my muse, Anna threw the book across the room. Carly played girlfriend to Jack, who gave her an early Christmas present, still acting like the loving gal. Carly beamed when Jack gave her a choker for Christmas. He asked why she hadn't been at the hostel recently, and she said she loved being home for the leaves. She added that she wouldn't see much of him during the manhunt for Valentine. When Jack Brennan suffed about Lulu Spencer blocking him from talking to Charlotte Cassadine, Carly asked if he demanded her to talk to her kinsman. Looking down, Jack said he wouldn't want to involve Carly or her family in his work. Carly hid her wrathfulness at his comment and offered to talk to Lulu for him. Also they kissed. After Jack left, Valentine came down from the garret. Carly told him that Lulu wouldn't let Jack talk to Charlotte and that she allowed. Jack really wanted to cover Charlotte. Valentine scarfed, saying Jack was only nice when it helped him, and asked how Carly got involved with him. She explained that Jason Morgan had to work with the FBI, which led her to visit Jack in captivity for word on the FBI. And also Agent John Cates took her to court for wrongdoing. Valentine figured out that the charges were dropped when the videotape substantiation dissolved, since the WSB could manipulate lines. Stay. Are you saying Jack made the substantiation against me vanish? Carly asked, shocked. Valentine fooled it was Aunt Santa Claus. Well, I can assure you, it clearly was Aunt Santa Claus, Valentine fooled, adding a touch of humor to the tense situation. Meanwhile, Carly was struck with horror as the consummation of Jack's conduct began to sink by. She precipitously wiped down her gashes, scuffling with the uncomfortable study that Jack had concealed this verity from her, maybe in trouble to spare her from feeling a sense of obligation. Still, Valentine was quick to fit, warning her that Jack's silence might have stemmed from a further tone-serving motive. He'd chosen not to partake this information because he was reserving it for a moment when it would serve him the best. Brad took Britt to Café Sherry to catch up. They celebrated their reunion with champagne and a 5-course mess. Brad wanted to know about her supposed death, so Britt explained how she was cured after Heather Weber's attack and taken to a 5-star resort in Croatia by her father's old associates. In return for an experimental medicine that managed her Huntington's, she supported with their secret cold emulsion exploration. Britt continued to talk about the work at the 5 Poppies, and after Brad and Britt's embarrassing problem, Britt said Pascal was her tutor, but her orders came from Jen Sidwell, the top Joe. Brad honored the name as the father of Lucas Jones's new swain, Marco Rios. Continuing her story, Britt told how Jason ultimately saved her and brought her back to Port Charles. Although she was relieved to escape the 5 Poppies' captivity, Britt admitted she still had to do Sidwell's exploration to keep getting her drug. After expressing joy at being back together, Britt and Brad faced off over the bill. Realizing they were both too beggared to pay, Nathan backed up Lulu to Brennan after bringing Charlotte home from academy. Nathan West awaited for Lulu to come back from the courthouse. She expressed her gratefulness for his help and participated her worries that Charlotte might leave with Valentine. Nathan comforted her that Charlotte loved her mama grounded on their addresses. Also, Jack knocked on the door, wanting to speak with Lulu alone. Despite Brennan's expostulations, she claimed Nathan's stay. When she wouldn't let Jack talk to Charlotte, he hovered to take her to WSB headquarters, claiming it was a public security issue since she had a son with a fugitive. Lulu stood firm, grueling Brennan to arrest her, but Nathan wouldn't let her be questioned without a counsel. Jack continued his pitfalls. Jack reiterated that Valentine could come for Charlotte and indicted Lulu of putting her son at threat. He struck a wimwams by questioning her parenthood. As their argument escalated, Jack claimed Valentine had raised Charlotte to be his abettor. When Nathan sarcastically asked if Jack would arrest a 16-time-old, Jack claimed he'd save Charlotte's life. Realizing he couldn't make progress with Nathan there, Jack suggested Lulu was falling into Detective West's trap. He refocused out how it was suspicious that the PCPD reinstated Nathan's emblem after 7 times of memory loss, advising Lulu that her friend's father was Faison. Jason asked Britt for help. Jason visited Jocelyn Jax's apartment without notice and showed her a communication on his phone asking if she checked for bugs. Since she did that every day, formerly Jocelyn verified it was clear. They talked about how the WSB doesn't trust anyone, indeed their agents. Jason demanded her help for Britt and wanted to know how the WSB's disquisition into the 5 Poppies connected to Sidwell, Henry Dalton, and Faison. Jaws argued it would be disloyalty for her to partake that information as an agent, but Jason said people would suppose he got the word from Britt. When Jocelyn suggested he ask Britt directly, Jason said Britt wouldn't tell him anything. Jason was hopeless, reminded Joss Britt saved her life doubly desperately. Jason reminded Jocelyn that Britt had saved her life doubly and demanded the drug they had. He claimed she could trust him, unlike Jack Brennan. Jocelyn also mentioned she had dubieties about working for the WSB since Vaughn faded, feeling like just a tool for her master because Jack was so focused on Sidwell and Faison's design. Jason promised he'd do anything to cover her and Britt, and Joss agreed she trusted him further than Brennan. Willow's trial began during a break after opening statements. Alexis Davis reminded Willow Tate to stay focused but not emotional while substantiation spoke. Dante Falconeri informed Justine Turner that the business cam footage of Willow outside Drew Kane's house was missing. When the trial proceeded, Turner called Tracy Quartermaine as her first substantiation. As Tracy described her conduct after chancing Drew bleeding, Justine asked if she had touched or moved anything besides the mask she used to cover Drew, particularly the softball club. Tracy witnessed that she stepped over the club and didn't touch anything differently. Alexis cross-questioned Tracy during cross-examination. Alexis asked why Tracy visited the victim in a rainfall. Tracy snapped back that she went to Drew's house to defy him about her friend, Stella Henry, being arrested. When Alexis asked if Tracy saw her customer there, Tracy recalled telling Michael Corinthos she saw him outside Drew's house. She also replied actually with a no. Nina Reeves was called next, and when Justine asked why she gave a false justification for herself and Willow, Nina said she wanted to cover her son from a witch quest. Alexis took over questioning again. Alexis took over questioning and got Nina to admit that Willow no way asked her to produce the justification. Willow probably went on with it, allowing her mama might be the shooter. After Nina's evidence, Drew told Team Willow that the jury was induced by the weak execution case. Nina participated that she tried to take the blame for the false justification and smiled when Alexis bothered about the jury's response to the business camera footage. Also, Dante witnessed about the forensic substantiation from the gun that shot Drew, and how cell phone records and business camera 65 footage showed Willow near the Solons' home. Justine tried to submit prints from the traffic camera as substantiation. Alexis expostulated when Justine tried to submit prints from the business camera as substantiation. Alexis expostulated because digital images can be altered. The judge agreed with the defense and ruled the prints inadmissible, hurting the execution's case. During cross-examination, Dante tossed as Alexis asked how Willow came the PCPD's main suspect on the first night of the disquisition. The defense counsel refocused out that numerous at the Quartermaine estate had easier access to the armament than her customer, including Michael, Dante's family. Christina Corinthos Davis entered the courtroom as Tracy exited. Alexis also questioned Dante. Alexis inquired of Dante whether he'd ever regarded Michael as an implicit suspect or if his feelings had swayed his assessment of the situation. Justine incontinently raised an expostulation to this line of questioning, and the judge concurred with her station. Accordingly, Dante was excused from the courtroom. Still, when Alexis diverted her attention back to the gallery, she was taken suddenly to find Christina deposited just behind Michael. The shock boosted when Justine suddenly summoned Christina to take the stage as the coming substantiation for the execution.